Kunda Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Girivardhari. Asuranandana Bhagavatam Ranjana. Asuranandana Bhagavatam Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Govardhana Vallabha Girivardhari. Asuranandana Bhagavatam Ranjana. Asuranandana Bhagavatam Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. ISKCON Govardhana ki jai, Govardhana Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Govardhana. Oh, glorious summer devotees, oh, glorious the summer devotees, oh, glorious the summer devotees, oh, glorious the Shigu and Shigaranga. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, text number 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tarantihi Anjasamicham Nivrachayadanugrahat Yogana Sabhavam Kim Svid Anugrayeta Yat Parahai Tarantihi Anjasamicham Nivrittayadanugrahat Yogena Sabhavam Kim Svid Anugrayeta Yat Parahai Tarantihi Anjasamicham Nivrittayadanugrahat Yogena Sabhavam Kim Svid Anugrayeta Yat Parahai. Someone like to chant? Tarantihi Anjasamicham Nivrittayadanugrahat Yogena Sabhavam Kim Svid Anugrayeta Yat Parahai Tarantihi Anjasamicham Nivrittayadanugrahat Yogena Sabhavam Kim Svid Anugrayeta Yat Parahai. Word for word, Taranti, crossover. He, because, Anjasa, easily, Micham, birth and death, Nivrittaha, ceasing all material desires, Yat, your, Anugrahad, by mercy, Yoganaha, transcendentalists, Sahat, the Supreme Lord, Bhavam, you, Kim Sweet, never possible, Anugayete, may be favoured, Yat, which, Parahay, by others. Translation per Bodhvanya Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: mystics and transcendentalists, by the mercy of the Lord, cross beyond nescience by ceasing all material desires. It is not possible, therefore, that the Supreme Lord can be favoured by others. Purport: unless one is favoured by the Supreme Lord, one cannot cross over the ocean of the nescience of repeated birth and death. Here it is stated that yogis or mystics cross beyond nescience by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many kinds of mystics, such as the Karma Yogi, Jnana Yogi, Jnana Yogi, Bhakti Yogi. The Karmis particularly search after the favour of the demigods. The Jnanis want to become one with the Supreme Absolute Truth, and the Yogis are satisfied simply by partial vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, and ultimately by oneness with Him. But the Bhaktas, the devotees, want to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead eternally and serve Him. It has already been admitted that the Lord is eternal, and those who want the favour of the Supreme Lord perpetually are also eternal. Therefore, yogis here means devotees. By the mercy of the Lord, devotees can easily pass beyond the nescience of birth and death and attain the eternal abode of the Lord. The Lord is therefore not in need of another's favour, because no one is equal to or greater than Him. Actually, everyone needs the favour of the Lord for successful understanding of His human mission. So we're continuing hearing from Maitreya speaking to Vidura, and he's relating the story of how Jai and Vijay were cursed. And here the four Kumaras who did the cursing are offering prayers to Lord Vishnu, but in a very apologetic mood, but very repentant, that's the word, repentant mood, because they've understood Jai and Vijay are eternal associates of Lord Vishnu, they're eternal residents of Vaikuntha. So they're understanding they've actually done some bad thing. They've actually cursed just due to some unexpected anger had been checked. They were checked by Jai and Vijay by entering into Vaikuntha, so they become angry, and as a result of that they cursed Jai and Vijay. So that anger was unforeseen and very unusual, that for Kumaras, saintly persons, they would utter a curse like that. Of course, we hear further on in the chapter that Lord Vishnu, he says, actually everything is by my arrangement. I've ordained this whole, I ordained the anger of the four Kumaras, I ordained the blessing, the cursing of Jai and Vijay. Everything is by my arrangement. I take full responsibility. So, because Vishnu, he likes to have martial pastimes, like fighting pastimes, and he can't fight his devotees in the spiritual in Vaikuntha, and he doesn't have demons in Vaikuntha. So therefore he has to make an arrangement for demons to appear in the material realm so that he can appear and engage in that fighting. So this whole arrangement is ultimately for his pleasure, but also we do hear that Jai and Vijay, understanding this mood of their master Lord Vishnu, that please make some arrangements so we can take birth in the material so that we can fight you. So everything is interrelated. There's a story, understanding behind everything. So, the theme of this purport, this verse and purport, is receiving or begging the favour of the Supreme Lord. So, and without that favour, one can't progress in spiritual life, and one has received that favour. There's nothing else that needs to be achieved once we've received the favour of Krishna or Vishnu. So the same message Krishna tells us, Bhagavata 7:14, that Devi Shigunamaya Mamamatrataya Mam Evi Prabandhate Mayam Tam Tarantate, that this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So those who surrender unto the will of the Supreme Personality receive the favour of him, and one can easily cross over the ocean of nescience, or the ocean of the three modes of material nature, the ocean of repeated birth and death. But unless one surrenders unto Krishna, following his instructions, one can't receive that blessing, that favour. And so specifically, how does one receive that? How does one receive that favour? How do we go about receiving that favour? So many different ways could be said. We have the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, etc. But we do hear Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he mentions in his Govardhana that we sing every morning, the Mangalarti prayers, that he mentions by singing these Mangalarti prayers every morning, the blessing one will receive is that one who, with great care and attention, recites this beautiful prayer to the spiritual master during the Brahma Muhurta. Whose phone is that? Is it behind us? Okay. One who, with great care and attention, recites this beautiful prayer to the spiritual master during the Brahma Muhurta obtains direct service to Krishna, the Lord of Vrindavan, at the time of his death. So this is a very powerful blessing that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is offering us. By reciting the Mangalarti prayer Gavastikam during the Brahma Muhurta. Of course, the Brahma Muhurta is the most potent time of that 24-hour period. The 24 hours divided into Muhurtas, and the Brahma Muhurta begins round about, I think it's 1 hour 35 minutes or so before sunrise. So by meditating on Krishna, offering prayers, chanting his names during that Brahma Muhurta is the most powerful time, most potent time. And one who does that, the blessing is that one obtains direct service to Krishna, the Lord of Vrindavan, at the time of his death. So this is one way how we can achieve the favour of the Lord. And when a pure self-realised soul offers its blessings, Krishna is very pleased to fulfil that blessing. Just like Srila Prabhupada has given us some, if you do like this, you'll receive the favour of Krishna. Krishna very happily fulfills the result of that promise that the spiritual master gives. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, great personality in our disciplic succession, one of the previous acharyas, he's given this promise that we will receive the direct service of Krishna if we follow this instruction. So we should have great faith that this will be the benediction. So particularly verse 8 of the Mangaladi Govardhana, that Yasha Prashadat Bhagavat Prashado, Yasha Prashadat Nagatikatopi, Dayans Tovams Tasha Yashti Shangyam, Vande Shigroshi Chanada Vindam, that by the mercy of the spiritual master one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master. So this is one very potent way of receiving the favour of the Supreme Personality, by offering respect and prayers and service to the spiritual master. If one pleases the spiritual master, automatically Krishna becomes pleased. So we know that from Krishna we get Guru, from Guru we get Krishna. So when the desire is in the heart to situate oneself on the spiritual path, Super Soul Krishna, Vishnu within the heart recognises that, and he leads us he makes that arrangement so that we become in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, so that we can proceed on the path of our spiritual life. And so it's mentioned these different types of yogis. So particularly the Kami yogis, their goal is the demigods. To receive the favour of the demigods, go to the heavenly planets. But in the previous chapter, we hear that the 4 Kamaras, they confirm the statement that the Supreme Lord, but not the demigods, is the ultimate goal of religious principles. So those who are worshipping the demigods to achieve the heavenly planets, at least they're doing something that's beyond themselves. They're worshipping somebody beyond themselves. They don't think that I am the centre of the universe. They're worshipping the demigods. And even Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the ability to worship the demigods also comes from me. I make them steady in that path. So ultimately, it's always the favour of Krishna that we need to achieve success in spiritual life. And as we know, in Bhagavad Gita, basically it's divided into 3 parts. Chapter 1 to 6, 7 to 12, 13 to 18. So the first part, chapters 1 to 6, basically deals with Karma Yoga. And the very last verse, chapter 6, 647, that very last verse, Yoganam apisabesham mat yanata atmanam shravan bhatatoyoram sa mat yukta tamon mataha, that of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental service to me, loving service to me, is the most intimately united me of yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So this is, in one sense, the first mention of bhakti, of devotion, But in the previous chapters, Krishna, what he wants to do is throw out the net as far and wide as possible and drag everybody into his lotus feet. So the Karma Kundis, the Karma Yogis, the Jnana Yogis, the Dhyana Yogis, everybody. But really what he wants to do is make everybody a bhakti yogi, make everybody come in, practice bhakti yogi, practice devotion, because this will achieve the highest goal. These other yogas, it's sort of, in one sense, it's like a bit of a selfish pursuit, that they're pursuing those types of yogas to bring themselves happiness and satisfaction. But the bhakti yogi, the devotee, they only want to give Krishna happiness. That's the goal. That the goal of giving oneself happiness isn't really there in the heart of a pure devotee. It's simply giving Krishna happiness automatically. They'll achieve that happiness anyway, but still, that's not the goal. That's not what they're after. But these other yogas, there's a bit of a selfish intent there that by doing this, I'll become happy. You know, I'll achieve mystic cities and impress everybody, or I'll enter into the Brahma Jyoti, the Brahmananda. I'll receive the bliss of being, you know, oneness in Brahma, etc. Or I'll achieve the heavenly planets and enjoy with the demigods. So it's all about selfish enjoyment to some degree or another. But for the bhakti yogi, it's simply giving pleasure to Krishna. And in that, I think it's Svetasvata Upanishad, that Harinama, Harinama, Harinameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gati Amyata. That 3 times we're hearing that the holy name is the only way in this Kali Yuga, and said Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva. So 3 times it's the only way. So the Acharyas mention that the first Nasteva means not Karma Yoga. The second Nasteva, not Gnana Yoga. The third Nasteva is not Astanga Yoga, like that, as rejecting those, but simply becoming a devotee, practicing Bhakti Yoga is recommended. Actually, it's a funny story about this verse. The Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj, who's based in Bhaktivedanta Manor, some years ago he was in the temple room and a guest came in, and the altar of Gauni Thai in the temple room there at the manor, it has this verse written. And so anyway, Maharaj was just explaining different things to this guest, and this guest was reading the Sanskrit, reading this verse, and he said, well, I have a question. It says, who is Ava and why was she so nasty? Nasty Eva. So anyway, he mentioned that in one class. So Prabhupada mentions in this purport to this verse 647, the culmination of the kinds of yoga practices lies in Bhakti Yoga. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of Bhakti in Bhakti Yoga. From the beginning of Karma Yoga to the end of Bhakti Yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma Yoga, without fruited results, is the beginning of this path. When Karma Yoga increases in knowledge and enunciation, the stage is called Gnana Yoga. When Gnana Yoga increases in meditation on the Super Soul, Lord within the heart, by different physical processes, and the mind is on him, it is called Astanga Yoga. And when one surpasses the Astanga Yoga and comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, it is called Bhakti Yoga. So this is like what Prabhupada is describing as like what sometimes called the yoga ladder. So in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he mentions yoga ladder, I think it's about 6 times, uses this term. So one thing about this ladder is transcendental. It's not that we have to start from the bottom and work our way up. You know, we can join that ladder at any point according to our, you know, personal sort of situation, realization and understanding. So we can come right to the top of the ladder immediately and engage in Bhakti Yoga. So, you know, at the bottom of the ladder, Karma Kanda, just living as a human being and following Vedic principles. This is the very beginning of this yoga ladder. Above that, Karma Yoga, becoming a little bit detached but worshipping the demigods with the idea of achieving the heavenly planets. Gnana Yoga, just developing philosophical knowledge through some sort of speculative means, and for many Gnana yogas, they achieve Brahman realization, maybe enter into the Brahman, or they may go on to Astanga yoga, the eightfold processes, culminating in Samadhi. And for them, it may be that super soul realization, but right at the top is Bhakti Yoga. So one may go through that whole different fields, or if one is very fortunate, we can come straight to the top of the ladder immediately. And of course, it should also be said that these different levels on the yoga ladder, still to get the result of those processes, bhakti is still required. Some element of bhakti is still required. Without devotion is simply empty practices, useless practices. So Prabhupada, he mentions these different levels many times, and in different classes, in different ways, and perhaps depending on the audience he's speaking to or the mood he's in. In one class he described these different levels as first class yogi, second class yogi, third class yogi, like that. In another class he said third class rascal, second class rascal, and first class rascal. So different ways he's presenting it, but ultimately, like I mentioned, that Krishna was spreading the net as wide as possible and trying to bring everyone to his lotus feet, regardless of what level they're on. But really, he just wants to bring everybody into bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada, when he gave us Bhagavad Gita, he titled it Bhagavad Gita as it is. Or another way you could give that title is Bhagavad Gita as what Krishna really wanted to say. That just give up everything, like he said in 1866, give up all these other dharmas and just surrender to me, become a bhakti yogi. So sometimes Prabhupada was criticised by other scholars, etc., that your purport isn't matching the verse. But Prabhupada said, no, I'm just saying what Krishna really wanted to say. He wants everybody to engage in bhakti yoga devotional service. So his purports reflect that. So in today's purport, Prabhupada mentions here, it is stated that yogis and mystics cross beyond the nescience by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Gyanis want to become one with the Supreme Absolute Truth. So that's their goal. Of course, there is a difference between Prabhupada sort of uses impersonalists and Mayavadis. He sort of uses both. But in one sense, technically you could say impersonalist is a bona fide process in one sense, that meditating on the impersonal Brahman to enter into that. But that's opposed to being a Mayavadi. A Mayavadi is one who thinks everything is illusion. Even Krishna's form is illusion. And one may even chant Hare Krishna, but after a while you can give that up to go on to something beyond that. So this is Mayavadi, very offensive. Haridas Thakur mentions in the Harinam Chintamani that a Mayavadi may even be chanting Krishna's names, but it appears like sound syllables are coming from their mouth, but it is not the holy name due to their offensive mentality. So, I mean, as I say, Prabhupada uses the two terms interchangeably, but there is technically a difference. So the Gyanis are impersonalists, they want to merge into the effulgence of Krishna, and so this is due to lack of knowledge or nescience of Krishna's personal form. So we have the example in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Madhya Lila, where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Puri, when he first met Lord Chaitanya, and we know the story that Lord Chaitanya went into the temple, Jagannath temple, and was dancing in ecstasy in such a wonderful way that nobody had ever seen before, and then he just fell unconscious. And the priest thought this person is a bit of a crazy person, and they come out with sticks about to beat him. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was there, said, no, leave him alone. He was very attracted to Lord Chaitanya, not really knowing who he was or what he was, but by his beautiful external features, he was attracted. And so he had Lord Chaitanya taken to his house. He was still unconscious, but taken to his house. After some time, Lord Chaitanya's followers came to the house, and headed by Lord Nityananda, Gopinathacharya, etc. And they were able to revive Lord Chaitanya by chanting the holy name in his ear. And so from Gopinathacharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya heard that actually this Lord Chaitanya, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is how he presented Lord Chaitanya to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, because Sarvabhauma was the head of the impersonalists at that time. He had the favour of the king, had many disciples, and he was known all over the country as the leading Ghana yogi or impersonalist. He also happened to be the brother-in-law of Gopinathacharya. So Gopinathacharya, he was able to speak to him perhaps a bit more liberally than perhaps others might have due to his, situation. So Gopinathacharya told Sarvabhauma that no one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being favoured by him. So as I mentioned, this is the theme of this verse and purport, getting the favour of the Supreme Person. So Gopinathacharya is telling Sarvabhauma, you cannot understand the Supreme Lord unless you have his favour. And he used different quotes from acharyas and scripture to reveal to Sarvabhauma that actually this sannyasi, Lord Chaitanya, was actually the Supreme Personality. But due to Sarvabhauma's, being very much in that impersonalist sort of path, he didn't take these statements very seriously. So Gopinathacharya, he said, my dear Bhattacharya, you don't know the greatness. I'm just reading from Madhya Leela 6.78. My dear Bhattacharya, you don't know the greatness of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are found in him to the highest degree. But the disciples of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they retaliated. By what evidence do you conclude that this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord? Gopinathacharya replied that the statements of authorized acharyas who understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are proof. So in other words, Guru Sadhu Sastra. This is how we understand anything in spiritual life. So we have three primary sources of evidence in the Vedas, Pratyaksha, Anuman and Shabda Brahman. So Pratyaksha is like empirical evidence, direct perception. Anuman is inference, inferring something based on what one is observing. And then Shabda Brahman. So of the three, Shabda Brahman is considered highest because Shabda means the spiritual sound vibration of Sastra. The other two more or less relate to using one's senses, which of course are imperfect, but Shabda Brahman coming from a perfect source. So the disciples of Sarvabhauma said, well, for us, we derive knowledge of the Absolute by logical hypothesis. So this is basically Pratyaksha, hypothesis, experimentation, observation. They try to, so Prabhupada mentions in their purport to that verse that the Mayavadi philosophers in particular make certain hypotheses about the absolute truth. They reason that in the material world we experience that everything is created. Therefore, there must be a creator of this total cosmic manifestation. The Mayavadis do not accept this creator can be a person. As soon as they think of a person, they think of a person, like themselves in this material world with limited potency. Therefore, they finally conclude with this hypothesis process, conclude that the impersonal Brahman is the supreme. So that's more or less how the impersonalists understand what is supreme is the Brahman, and everything is coming from Brahman. But so Govardhana, to challenge that statement, he quoted from Bhagavad Gita 7:25 that I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. So he's speaking this to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his disciples. Indirectly, he's saying, actually, you're foolish and unintelligent. So for them, I am covered by my eternal creative potency, and so the deluded world knows me not, who am unborn and infallible. I can only be understood by my bona fide devotees. And then he quoted another verse, 1855, one can understand me only by devotional process. In other words, being favoured by Krishna. One takes up the devotional process, one becomes favoured by Krishna. Text 82, Govardhana continued, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by his mercy, not by guesswork or hypothesis. If one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favour by dint of devotional service, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then he directly addressed Sarvabhauma, Govardhana directly addressed Sarvabhauma, said, you're a great scholar, you have so many different disciples, you have the favour of the king. Nonetheless, because you are bereft of even just a pinch of the Lord's mercy, you cannot understand him, even though he's directly here in your house. So, as I said, because he was his brother-in-law, he could speak quite liberally like that. So, he continued that knowledge of the sum and bone and the absolute truth. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied to that, said, my dear Govardhanacharya, what is the proof that you have received the mercy of the Lord? And Govardhanacharya said, yes, knowledge of the sum and bone and the absolute truth is the evidence of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. In other words, if you understand the Supreme Lord, who he is, how he acts, his appearance and disappearance, if you have knowledge of the absolute truth, Krishna, that means you have his favour, you have his mercy. He's giving you knowledge of himself within the heart as a result of your devotional service. So he continued, you have seen the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like when Lord Chaitanya was in the Jagannath temple. You have seen the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during his absorption in ecstatic mood. Despite directly perceiving the symptoms of the Supreme Lord in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you cannot understand him. This is commonly called illusion. So he's making that point. Krishna himself in the form of Lord Chaitanya is directly here in your house. You can't understand him. He exhibited the highest level of love of Godhead. Still, you can't understand him. So Sarvabhauma said, okay. So in his mind, he's trying to, how do I defeat this argument? And so he's thinking, well, actually, we cannot accept Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu because according to Sastra, there is no incarnation in this age of Kali. Another name of Lord Vishnu is Triyuga, because there is no incarnation of Lord Vishnu in Kali Yuga. Indeed, this is the verdict of all revealed scriptures. So a whole debate's going on here. So Govardhana said, no, there is actually certainly an incarnation in every age, and such an incarnation is called the Yuga Avatar. but your heart has become so hardened by logic and argument that you cannot consider all these facts. So these 3 points Gopinathacharya is bringing up to show Sarvabhauma that you cannot understand him. Even though he's in here in your house, you've seen the ecstatic symptoms, and because your heart is hardened with logic and argument, hypothesis argument. So then to establish his point, Gopinathacharya quoted from Bhagavatam, he's saying, in this age, those who are intelligent perform the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in this age, always describing the glories of Krishna. That incarnation is yellowish in hue and is always associated with his plenary expansions, such as Sri Nityananda Prabhu, his personal expansion, such as Gadadhar, as well as devotees and associates such as Srivas and Swarup Damodar. And again, he quoted another verse, the Lord in the incarnation of Gaurasundra will take sannyas, and he will be distinguished from Mayavadi sannyasis in that he will be fixed in devotional service and will spread the Sankirtan movement. However, not all is lost. Gopinathacharya says there's still opportunity for you, my dear Sarvabhauma. He says, when the Lord will be pleased with you and favours you, you will also understand these conclusions from Sadhu and Sastra. So it was like a friendly, brother-in-law, but Swarup Damodar, he was presenting to Swarup Damodar, to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, all these different points. Because of these different things, you cannot understand. But if he becomes pleased with you, in other words, if you become a devotee and get his favour, then you also will be understand like that. So it's a very interesting exchange. And of course we know that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he thought he would bestow his favour on Lord Chaitanya by explaining to him the Brahma Sutras, and after 5 or 7 days, he said, well, I'm explaining, but my dear Lord Chaitanya, you're not asking any questions. And Lord Chaitanya said, look, I fully understand the Brahma Sutras, but I don't understand your explanation. So, and in that way, Lord Chaitanya, he actually explained from a devotional perspective, and that way Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya become the greatest Vaishnava, receiving the favour of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so we'll end there, a few minutes for questions. Is there any? Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. My question is regarding Bhakti Yoga. Can it be mixed up with the Karam Yoga and Jnana Yoga and all this?
Yeah,
is it still a Bhakti Yoga or not?
That basically describes our situation, that we're mixing, like Kama Misra Bhakti or Ghana Misra Bhakti. Yeah, so we're performing Bhakti, our desires to please Krishna, but it's mixed with the fruitive desire to enjoy. Or it's mixed with jnana, just philosophical speculation. So, but that's to be expected in the beginning. It's going to be mixed, but as we continue, ideally we're becoming less kami or gani and more bhakta.
It's a gradual process.
Yeah. So as we become purified, as our knowledge increases, our devotion will increase, and these other things will disappear.
So bhakti is in every aspect. Bhakti is still there, but the pure bhakti at the top is without all these things.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami, he gives that explanation of bhakti. The pure devotional service is free from the desire of jnana and karma. Anything else? Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.